Arguably gone back and forth, back and forth, back and forth in the United States between being a more conservative country, shall we say, and a more liberal country. Now, those words in the last hour, I was talking about those words in the context of Hobbes and Locke and Jefferson and Rousseau. In a way, you could use those frames. But, for example, from Teddy Roosevelt until 1920, we had a very activist government. It was actively breaking up big companies and working for the benefit of small business people and taxing at the top rate of 95%, millionaires and what today we would call billionaires. And corporations were providing almost 40% of all the total revenues into the federal government. In the election of 1920, Warren Harding ran on the campaign promise of less government in business, more business in government. That was his slogan, one of his two slogans. And he delivered on that. He dropped the top tax rate down to 25%. He dropped the corporate tax rate, kicked off the roaring 20s, which then led to the great crash of 1929. And then we became a more liberal country. So we had this conservative era and then this liberal era, which arguably was the FDR, followed by Truman, followed by Eisenhower, followed by Kennedy, followed by Lyndon Johnson. Actually, the more liberal era, the era of Social Security and Medicare and unemployment benefits and minimum wage and workplace protections, went from FDR's presidency in 1932 up until Ronald Reagan's presidency in 1980. And then we flipped back to the more Warren Harding kind of conservative, well, those are really not the jobs of government. Those are not the roles of government. Let's get government out of the business education. Let's privatize our schools. Let's get business government out of meddling in workplace issues. It shouldn't be backstopping unions, all these kinds of things. And so we had the Reagan Revolution, in a very real sense, a revolution. Charles Krauthammer was positing on Fox News yesterday that Obama's, not his election, but his reelection, that the speech that he gave yesterday was basically a declaration that the era of Reagan was over. Much like FDR in 1933 said that the era of Warren Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover was over, that era was over, and that we were coming back into a new progressive era, not unlike that of the FDR and Truman and Eisenhower administrations. Here is Charles Krauthammer on Fox News.
And I think what's most interesting is that Obama basically is declaring the end of Reaganism in this speech. Remember, he once said that Ronald Reagan was historically consequential in a way that Bill Clinton was not. And what Obama meant is that Obama had changed the ideological course of the country.
That Reagan had
in 1981, in his inaugural address, within 2 minutes, Reagan had declared that government is not the solution, government is the problem. Today's inaugural address was a rebuke to that entire idea. This speech today was an ode to big government. It was a hymn to big government.
And I absolutely agree with Charles Krauthammer. Jamie Weinstein is on the line with us. He is the senior editor of the Daily Caller, dailycaller.com, the website. Hey, Jamie.
Hey, Tom. How are you?
Fine. Good to see you again. You're a conservative. I'm a liberal, or however, whatever kind of labels we want to put on it. Do we agree that this transition is happening right now?
Well, I think what Krauthammer was saying is astute and right. I'm not sure he's saying that it's definitive, that this is what we're going to have. That's clearly, I think, what Obama signaled he wants to call for. And if that does in fact occur and that the Obama era lasts beyond his presidency, maybe historians will look back and say, well, this was the moment that was kind of the declaration. I still think that there's a potential that that this era doesn't last particularly long, but certainly I think yesterday's speech was a declaration by President Obama that this is the end of Reaganism and the return of big government.
You know, every time we've tried shrinking government and thus expanding the role of billionaires in our civil society, because it really, one balances the other, right? I mean, organized money versus organized people or politics. Every time we've tried that, the results have been disastrous. After Reconstruction in the early 1880s, you could argue starting with the Ulysses S. Grant administration, we had the longest depression in the entire history and the deepest in the entire history of the United States. It was worse than the Great Depression in the 1930s. And then it was progressives that pulled us out of that in the 1900s, in 1900, after the assassination of McKinley and Teddy Roosevelt, the progressive. And in fact, you could even argue that Taft, who followed him, a Republican president, was a progressive. And then, we went back into this conservative era, and boom, we got the Great Depression. And then we came out of that, and we had 40 years of prosperity. Eisenhower was clearly a progressive. Nixon was a progressive by these standards. And then we came into Reaganomics, and we said, okay, let's try it again for the third time. Let's see, maybe third time is the charm. Get government out of the way. And what's happened in the 32 years since Reagan was inaugurated? Average working people's wages have gone up less than $1 in inflation-adjusted dollars, and the top 1% has seen their wealth go up 275%. We've gone from a nation that used to make things to a nation that buys things from China. We have impoverished ourselves.
I think that's obviously your interpretation of things.
Yeah, clearly.
In 1980, when Reagan was elected, in 1981, when he was inaugurated, this was Jimmy Carter era, the malaise speech, which he actually never used the word malaise, but was the time that we're going to have to understand that America is declining in the world, basicly.
Jimmy Carter never said that.
That was the distinct impression.
That was the conservative spin on it.
There's little question that we had to accept kind of a new state of affairs for the world. Reagan brought back hope and reinvigorated the economy, where our GDP was unleashed over that time. So much so that he changed the paradigm that Bill Clinton in his 1996 State of the Union speech basically echoed Reagan and said the era of big government is over.
I agree with you.
And this was
Clinton was following Reaganomics. Clinton did not reverse Reaganomics.
Well, this was a time of great prosperity and wealth creation in the United States.
Well, wasn't it a bubble?
I don't think it was a bubble.
We got a 32-year period where the average working person has gotten screwed and the rich have gotten really, really rich. How is that not a bubble?
Well, first of all, those two things don't necessarily go together, right? If
in history, they usually do.
If your numbers are right, just because the rich get richer doesn't mean the poor are supposedly being marginalized and we're on a bubble.
But that's what's happened.
I don't think the numbers you're taking into account, the entitlement programs and the increased benefits that go along there. But there's no question that there has been somewhat of a disparity between the rich and the rest. But still, when Reagan came into office,
we were the most socially mobile and economically mobile nation in the world.
When Reagan came
Today, we are the least socially and economically mobile nation of the 34 most developed nations.
When Reagan came into office, we were in economic decline. The United States was not in good shape. We
were doing just fine. We had an inflation problem as a result of the Vietnam War bills being paid off.
Tom, you really think that we were in great economic times when Reagan was
elected? I was running businesses during that time, Jamie. I'm a little older than you. I remember it well. I made a lot of money during that period of time.
I know a lot of people who were running businesses during that time. They don't recall that era as particularly a time of great prosperity.
It was expensive to get a mortgage. I'll tell you that.
Yes. Well, there is very few people, I think, that will take that interpretation, Tom, that the time of the end of the Carter eras were great time economically. Reagan came in, he kind of reinvigorated both the American spirit.
He borrowed $3 trillion, and he did it with Keynesian economics, Jamie. He borrowed $3 trillion and spent it to goose the economy.
Our GDP roared, Tom. And it was certainly not through purely Keynesian means. Milton Friedman was one of his big backers.
All right. I will leave you with the last word. Jamie Weinstein, the Daily Caller, dailycaller.com is the website. It's fascinating that we agree on this pivot point in any case. Jamie, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
We'll be back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So, what do you think? Are we at a turning point in history? And if so, how are the Republicans going to react to it?